Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer. Welcome to Wasteland Talks, my weekly talk show where I talk about whatever the hell I want. And this week, I have a good old college friend, Diana, here coming on to talk about Pearl from Ti West and Mia Goth. And this is a spoiler talk because, we're going to talk about all kinds of fun stuff. But Diana, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh my God, thank you for having me. Like, I am so excited to talk about this movie with someone who is just as obsessed as I am. So,
There you go. And before we get to talking about giving a little context to this very unique situation that Ti West has going on with this franchise, but Diana, would you like to shamelessly plug anything that our viewers could check out before we get started?
I love a shameless plug. You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Diana Gebbia. I primarily do a lot of Bravo talk. I'm trying to expand a little. So we may see some, movie reviews or just some more like celeb culture in there. And I also have a Bravo podcast called Believe in Bravo Besties. I believe is spelled BLEAV. And you can find it wherever you get your podcasts.
Awesome. So, to give a little context here, so I think a lot of people were surprised back earlier this year when the movie X came out from Ti West and A24, and it was great. And it was a crazy, schlocky kind of 70s slasher film, except there's a lot more under the surface to it.
Yeah.
And an incredible performance from Mia Goth, and both as a young woman and also as an old lady. And
wild.
yes,
Literally wild. I'm
and
talking to this guy on a dating app and I made him watch X and he had no clue they were the same person.
I think it took me a little while into the film to realize I'm like, she doesn't, so like it's really good makeup and everything, but on some level I'm just like, I don't think that's an actual old woman. And then I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's the same person. And it turned out to be.
Yeah.
And what surprised everybody on top of how great this movie was that there was an after the credits scene that was a trailer for a prequel. And then we have Pearl. So Pearl focuses on the backstory of this older woman as she's living on this farm. Her husband is off to war, and she's dealing with her father who has been stricken by like basically paralysis from like the Spanish flu at the time, which nice way of incorporating the fact that you're filming during COVID to just be like,
Yeah.
well, it's just going to be during another pandemic. And her mother, who she very obviously doesn't get along with or see eye to eye with. But Diana, what are your general thoughts on the film?
I thought it was brilliant. I loved everything about it. I thought it was very visually a gorgeous movie.
Mhm.
The score was also beautiful. Mia Goth absolutely killed it. I love the storyline. I heard some complaints, like some people were like, well, there weren't that many kills, or like it wasn't your typical horror movie. I
It's
just thought,
not, but that's
yeah,
not a bad thing.
exactly. Like I love that. I love that it is this dark twisted movie presented in a pretty little bow, because me as a person, like, I come off as a super girly like girl, but like I love true crime, I love horror, so like this is the perfect movie for me.
Yeah, and what's so interesting about this film is you know that Ti West was going for an homage to that Technicolor era of film. And it's interesting because technically it's not the era of the film because it takes place during World War One. So like really at that point you're still doing silent films, but it really captures, and I think the easiest thing to compare it to is like this looks like the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
And there's some references here that very obviously that's what that's supposed to be. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But it's that striking technicolor and the score from Tyler Bates and Tim Williams really hones in and channels like those early 30s kinds of films like Gone with the Wind, Wizard of Oz,
Yeah.
and it 100% feels that way. That's the feeling of the film. And it is something that like I appreciate you calling this a dark and twisted movie because it's not something where like this isn't like a grindhouse 70s slasher movie like X. And I think that's a cool thing. And you can tell, which alluding to, there's a third one coming. And it looks like it's stripped right out of the 1980s. So that's going
Yeah.
to be an interesting feel too. So you can obviously tell Ti West has a handle on the atmosphere that he wants to create around the film. And the film is campy and over the top in all the best ways. And the person who came to play the hardest was definitely Mia Goth, who honestly deserves an Oscar
Yes.
for just the part in the film where the credits are rolling.
Yes. 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 And it's so funny because, like, I texted you after I got out of the theaters and I said that to you, and you're like, I said the same thing. Like, oh my God. So we were talking about this a little bit before we hit record, but I went to see this at Alamo Draft House. And if you've ever been to Alamo Draft House, you know they're really strict about no texting, no talking, like all that stuff. But basically, when the credits are rolling, like they're not going to kick you out. So we're all watching. And at this point, we're full on reacting. And she's got that twisted smile on her face. And she's like crying and whatever. And we are all like, at first you hear like laughing, and then it's like, and we're all like starting to get like really physically weirded out. Like she did it, the thing she evoked just with one like frozen facial feature, like she's got to be a wizard or something, because that was just unreal.
I want to know how many takes that took, because one, and it's very interesting that you said that, Diana, because it definitely gave that, like, at first it's so obnoxious that you can't help but think it's funny, but then it goes on so long that you can't help but feel very unnerved and uncomfortable by it. And I think the second she starts crying from smiling so hard, you're just like, this is messed up.
Yeah, you're like, make it stop. Where's the escape hatch?
And it's like, how the hell's her husband reacting to this? And it's so interesting thinking about the context of like they never leave this farm. So like this man just like okay with the fact of walking in and finding these corpses and just like, you know what? I'm sticking with this woman.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because I mean, I really thought this was a near perfect movie. The only questions I was left with was about Howard, because obviously in X, he's sort of like an accomplice. Like he's in on the killings with her. And you could even see like at the one point when he goes over to Kid Cudi's character and he's like, "You trying to seduce my wife," which I think stems maybe from an insecurity that she did have an affair with the projectionist. Like he has no problem shooting him. He has no problem locking Jenna Ortega in the basement. But he comes home and he's so physically horrified from Pearl's dead parents at the table. So obviously, I mean, there's a 60-year jump from Pearl to X. So in those 60 years, he's got to make a switch. He's got to be like, this is my chick and I'm going to ride with her. But like, I want to know where that switch happens.
I feel like, and it's a very interesting thing because from a cultural standpoint, it's like people didn't get divorced.
Right.
And like you didn't give up on your marriage, and you come home from the war and your wife is like a murder, like this serial killer, and you're just like, well, she's my wife. And obviously over the course of, like you mentioned, 60 years, Howard's perspective on this has had to become like, because you have to, like, we know for a fact that it's not the first time they killed people in X. So like he knows that she has this in her, and like if you're sticking it out, I think the only way you're going to make it work is if you help her and try to cover it up and stuff like that. And there's all this weird insecurity because like Pearl has that relationship in X because she's jealous. She wanted to be a star, and you feel that so deeply in this film, Pearl. And from the moments of like, you know, and I just love every scene of her riding her bicycle and looking like she's the Wicked Witch of the West from of Wizard of Oz. And then like and then she sees that scarecrow.
Oh my God.
And that scene, when she went into that cornfield, finds a scarecrow, like just climbed up on top of it and just like, what is she doing? And this was definitely a moment in my theater with a bunch of critics. Everybody's like, what?
Yeah.
And just starts seducing the scarecrow and starts dancing with the scarecrow, takes his hat off and everything. I'm just like, is this like some kind of like twisted fan fiction of like what would happen in Wizard of Oz?
Yeah, that was definitely, I don't know. I just felt so uncomfortable in that moment, but you couldn't look away.
Yeah.
And I'm glad when she was dancing and before it got a little more X-rated, I'm glad there was that like little nod of humor in there where she sees the projectionist and she's like, I'm married. I'm like, okay, we had that laugh. But then like, oh my God, the turn it took, you just don't know what to make of it.
No, and this film is uncomfortably funny.
Yeah.
Like there's moments where it's just like, we're gonna have some fun with this,
Mm-hmm.
but we're gonna push all your buttons while we do it.
Yeah.
Because this is not gonna be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that moment's like her just screaming that and just going all out. The performance that Mia Goth gives in this film is next level. And she's 100% going to wind up joining the laundry list of other amazing actresses in horror movies that the Academy Awards is just like, nope, too weird for us. Because, well, yeah, and especially because like this year, some of the best performances by women in films are in weird films. Because like Michelle Yeoh and Everything Everywhere All at Once, Mia Goth in both of these films.
Yeah.
And I'm crossing my fingers that they magically have Maxine out by December and just like all three of them in the same year.
Oh my God, that would be incredible. But I don't think that's going to happen.
No, I don't think that's going to happen either.
Research, which like I kind of want to try out for.
There you go.
Oh my God.
But I know you mentioned like some people's criticisms, like it doesn't have enough kills in it, which, to be fair, how many people are in this movie?
Right.
So like
she does kill like 90% of the cast when you do the math.
Yeah, because like outside of all of her mask-ridden other townsfolk that she doesn't really interact with,
yeah,
she literally kills everybody else except for her husband.
Yeah, and the judges.
Which, oh my God, when because like, what's her is that like her cousin, right? Or like the other young woman?
No, that's her sister-in-law. That's Howard's sister.
Yeah, sister-in-law chasing her down the road. That was God. Intentionally hilarious and campy. And then her just like screaming down the road and just like, nope, you got stabbed to death. There you go.
Yeah. And when she was like walking away, I mean, obviously we knew she was going to get killed, but when she first started walking away, there was a little moment of like, all right, maybe she could let her go. But then all of a sudden you see her come out with that axe and she just has this look on her face like a bitch is going down.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, run. And then like Mitzi trips and we're all like, oh no. Like,
you're dead. We've seen enough horror movies at this point. You're definitely dead now.
Yeah.
And there's something so uncomfortable and weird about her relationship with her dad.
Yeah.
Straight up bathing in front of her like comatose father in a wheelchair. And it's just like, what are you doing? Like, and it's so terrible because like most of the film he's completely unresponsive. But then the moments where like he starts realizing like who his daughter really is, and he's just like that uncontrollable fear just stuck trapped in a prison, and you're just like, I feel so bad for this man right now, and this is so uncomfortable to watch.
Like he just wants to scream and he can't.
That's some good acting by that actor, being able to like pull in and restrain all of that. And then of course her mother.
Oh my God. I
And
would argue like she's maybe this is like a bit much, but I think she's the real villain of the film. Like, I mean, obviously Pearl's the real villain of the film because she like kills people, but like this mother is like she is such a bitch.
it had, like, obviously we've seen in film a lot, that uncomfortable relationship, like a parent who really is trying to force you into a life that you do not want. And you can tell from the start, Pearl did not want this life. She did not want to be trapped on this farm. She did not want to be, and like, there's a very immature, childish approach to the performance that Mia Goth has with Pearl, because like she's like throwing little tantrums and stuff like that, and screaming at the projections, "I'm married." It's just like, you didn't think about that like 2 minutes ago. And
Right?
how she just like lashes out about everything. But like her mother is so cold and so
Mm-hmm.
unsupportive. And obviously it was a different time, and like the expectation is like for a woman in that time period is one very specific thing. And her mother is so staunchly that. And
Mm-hmm.
it's an interesting, like, the whole entire film's leading up to her killing her mother, right? Like that's the whole entire driving force through this film, to like release. And
Mm-hmm.
getting up to that point where it's just like she finally does it, and it's just like, it's been coming for a long time. And I think
Yeah.
Pearl wanted to do this for a long time.
Yeah, which is so interesting because her death, I feel like, was the least intentional in a way because she just hit her and then like she got knocked into the fire. And like she had that moment of like, oh my God, what did I do? Because she poured the boiling corn water on her to put the fire out. But then after that point, that's when she left her for dead.
Yep.
And things took a turn for the worse. But like out of everyone she killed, that was the least like premeditated out of it all, you
Mhm.
know?
And I feel like a lot of places that's where it starts.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because it's very obvious, like Pearl transforms into a serial killer by the end of this film. And that awkward first kill of like, maybe it wasn't fully on purpose overtly, but you could tell deep down she wanted to hurt her mom and get the hell out of this life. And that was brutal. And then the makeup afterwards of like her mom charred and everything, it's just like, well, it's a lot of fun. But obviously the most like soul shattering scene in this film is Pearl's dreams getting shattered. What a
Mhm.
performance.
Yeah. Oh my God, hearing her like sob like that, and it was just such a painful sob. Like I've been there before when some things haven't worked out. So like I to see it on screen, you just feel for her. I think she is such an interesting character. I posted this and actually A24 reposted me. But I said it's just so interesting because you feel for her, but you are terrified by her at the same
Yep.
time. And that's something that doesn't come easily, as an actor, I'm sure. And even if you're writing and developing a character, that's not something that just easily. So the level of emotion from Mia's performance, as well as Ty and Mia's writing,
Yep.
is incredible.
I think that's a big piece of it, because her being a part of the writing of this film
Yeah.
and fully embodying this character and channeling this character. And you're right, it's the kind of thing where it's like from afar, we can be like, we feel sorry for you, we want this for you, but like, I would never want to meet Pearl.
No.
Not making it off that farm alive.
No.
And it's just like, no, thank you.
I actually have a question for you because the trailer itself was kind of vague. So going into this movie, I thought she was a star because the dancing that we see in the trailer, there's no hint that she gets rejected. We see the
Mm.
little dream sequence she has on stage in that costume, and there's no indication that it's a dream. So like I thought she was a star, and then like came back to the farm and was upset that her golden days were behind her. Did you like? Were you also thinking that, or did you think her dreams didn't come true from the get go?
That's an interesting thing because you're right. The trailer does a lot of heavy lifting to shape what kind of feel this film's going to have, but it doesn't really get into the narrative of the film. You
Yeah.
just know she's going to wind up murdering a bunch of people.
Yeah, exactly.
To be honest, I didn't really think about it. To be frank, it's interesting because it's like I'm in the point in my life where I see everything.
Mhm.
So like I don't like take a step back and think about, is this a story that I want to watch? It's
Right.
like, no, I'm just going in and watching this anyway. And but the second I saw this trailer, I'm like, well, I'm in.
Yeah.
I don't even care what this movie's about. And that's a very interesting point, Diana. And because either way, I feel like it would work, but I
Mhm.
guess the jealousy is stronger in X if she never got there in the
Exactly.
first place. And I feel like that's a better move with it. But
Mhm.
we still get the razzle dazzle of her like tryout and like her dream and stuff like that, and like us seeing that. But when it really comes down to it, I think it makes more sense for her to never have had it,
Yeah.
because then she's even more jealous. Because it's like, I feel like people say that about love too. It's just like, is it better to love and lost than to never love at all? I feel like if you've never actually had somebody, I think you have a bigger chip on your shoulder than if you had somebody and lost them.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thought. And I do, what? I wonder how most people feel going into this film and thinking about what this film's really about,
Mhm.
because you don't really know, but you're
Exactly.
along for the ride,
Yeah. Oh, hell yeah.
and it's a ride.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
And I have a feeling this is, because right off the bat, this is a weirder film
Mhm.
than X.
Mhm.
Like, I feel like X is especially for A24, is a lot more accessible of a horror film. Because let's be real here, most A24 horror films are not accessible
Right.
and are like deeply art house, like just unnerving kind of experiences. And X kind of feels like something you would expect from Blumhouse, because
Yeah.
it's like this pulpy kind of slasher film, except like it's sleeker in how they made it. Because like you watch a Blumhouse film, it's just like, this is like a cheesy kind of movie.
Yeah.
But this really feels like somebody's like fever dream of like a horror movie. And I'm like, yep, this feels more like an A24 movie. And I really wonder, like, I don't take a whole lot of weight in cinema scores from like films and stuff like that. Cause like, let's be real here, like Hereditary got a D.
Mhm.
And that movie is one of the most impactful horror films I think I've ever seen in my life. But the thing is, like, most people aren't gonna like be sitting there feeling that way. I wonder how people felt about this film, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
I had a blast. It's
Yeah.
definitely my cup of tea.
Me too. And what I love about this is that it is a prequel and it's like such an in-depth character study on
Yeah.
Pearl. Because and I was listening to some other podcast, I forget which one, but they brought up such a good point. Like, could this movie stand alone? In theory, yes, but like if X wasn't there, you'd be like, who is this girl and why do I care about her? But
Mhm.
because we've grown so attached to her story and X, and we've seen her play out, and then all of a sudden like Ti West pulls us out of his sleeve and is like, yeah, I just made a second movie, what about it? And like now we get to find out why this like old woman is the way she is. Like it's just, I don't know, it's like the icing on the cake.
Yeah. And I appreciate you bringing that up, because I think most people need to know this. Like, this is a character study. Like, this
Mhm.
whole entire film, which I think that's one of the things that, I guess one of the things that I liked less about Pearl versus X is like, X has such an interesting group of characters.
Yeah.
And it's a range of characters, and you have this ensemble. This film, like, you don't go a whole lot in depth with most of the people in Pearl's life, because this film's about Pearl. and it
Yeah.
really is about Pearl. Obviously, you get a lot more baggage with her mother because that's who she spends a lot of the time with. But like, this is really us getting a chance to look behind the eyes of like this crazy murderous old woman that we get in X, and it's it's so interesting that Ti West came up with this. Like,
Yeah.
how often do you see like a horror film and you have like a prequel to the quote unquote villain of the film, and it turns out to be something of quality? Because
Right.
like there's crap like Hannibal Rising, where it's like learning about like Hannibal when he was a kid or like a teenager, and just like as like a 14% on Rotten Tomatoes or something like that. Or it's like, do we want to watch a prequel to like Freddy Krueger? Do we care about Freddy Krueger before like he was killed? No, not really.
Oh, wait. I can hold on, talk.
There you go.
Okay, there you go. No, what I was gonna say is I think it served them really well that they did film this back to back because it was fresh in everyone's mind. They probably had a lot of the same crew. Actually, the actress who played her mother, Tandy Wright, is actually the intimacy coordinator for X. So
Interesting.
she probably had like some idea of, like a more personal connection to the story than another actress would have. I think, being on that set, they already spent all that time on the set. So naturally, they developed some connection and hooks into the set. So I really think it served them well. I am a little worried for Maxine. I'm not going to lie, I'm excited for Maxine. But I am a little worried because I'm like, we're in a different setting. We're in LA. It's going to be like, from what I read, it's going to have a lot to do with the VHS boom. But I'm like, you wiped out most of your cast, or pretty much all of your cast of X. You're really starting fresh. So like, there's going to be only Maxine's ties to that farm, and I'm curious. I feel like this could go really well or really badly.
Well, I think you bring up an interesting point because there's such a deep connection between these two.
Yeah.
Is Maxine going to feel like something that feels as deeply connected to it? And we're going to have to wait to find out. And whenever they announce it. But I guess, Diana, do you have any other final thoughts or things that you wanted to talk about in terms of Pearl?
Now just also I just want to say David Cornsweet, who played the projectionist. He's wonderful. He is great at that charming, like, old-timey character. I don't know if you've seen Hollywood on Netflix, but he was the main character of Hollywood. He's also a Philly guy, which is really cool. So I think he did a great job. I really think it was interesting that he was nameless, and also that someone in the trailer who I thought it was going to be Howard going into it, and then when it's not Howard and she's someone she has an affair with, I'm like, oh, she's going to kill him.
And that's happening.
Yeah, but I thought his performance was amazing too.
Pitchfork.
Yeah. Oh my God, that was brutal. That was I literally stared at the screen. Like, oh my God, like the most like Fran Drescher thing that could leave my mouth in the Alamo Drafthouse.
Yeah, Howard just strolls right in. Hi, honey, I'm back. What?
Yeah. God bless Howard. I think they should do a fourth movie about Howard.
Can you imagine Ti West doing like a war film about like Howard?
That would be sick.
And then him coming home and just being like,
well, doesn't he serve? This is World War I, and I feel like he served in both wars. So it would be interesting if they did like a World War II movie. So it's post like fucked up dinner scene. Oh, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse. But like post that dinner scene, and then like how do you call? He's like goes off to another war, and then maybe we'll get more answers about why they were so murdery and X together.
We're gonna get the X cinematic universe, and A24 is just like, go for it. Everybody else has one.
Yeah, exactly. I think so. I think Ti West should hire us as screenwriters, honestly.
There you go. I think we would have some fun with this. But
Yes.
obviously, this is a big recommendation for, I feel like, for both of us, for you to go check out Pearl, especially now because movie theaters need some love right now. And
Yeah.
Pearl's going to be probably sticking around, hopefully, for a little while.
This is a
Um,
movie you want to see in theaters. I feel like if I had seen it on my TV, it would not have done it as justice had I not gone to a movie. And if you can go to a movie with a more intimate viewing experience, like I went to Alamo. This is not an ad for Alamo Drafthouse, but I did go there. And it was a smaller like theater, and I really think that like more intimate viewing experience you got in that world more. So this is one to see in theaters for sure.
yeah, and I went to an indie theater in Philadelphia, and like
Yes.
that I think that really captured the feel because like I feel like it's a difference if I went to like a 400 seat AMC like
Yeah.
theater
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But and no, this is not an advertisement for Alamo Draft House, but maybe you could. Maybe I could get paid.
Yo,
I'll do
come
it, Alamo Draft House.
on.
Never been, but I'm sure it's great.
Oh, it's awesome. You guys come visit me. We'll have to go.
Absolutely. Diana, thank you so much for coming on and chatting Pearl with me.
Thank you for having me. I had so much fun.
And Diana will be coming back soon on Wasteland Talks, as we're going to be talking about some Tim Burton movies. Just
Yeah.
in time for Halloween. It's coming. It's almost October, my God. But thank all of you for tuning in and always supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.